If you asked me about my absolute favorite place in Ellijay, I'm going to have to say it's actually a cemetery. You see, every morning that we've been here, when I take my dog Lucy out for a walk, we inevitably find ourselves at the top of Ellijay's city cemetery, rising about 120 feet above the downtown square. It is an absolutely breathtaking place. Maybe it's the instinct to climb every hill she can find, but both she and I agree that there's just something about this cemetery that draws us here. It's quiet, it's peaceful, and at dawn you can see the mists still clinging to the Appalachian foothills. This time of year in particular, when they're blanketed in a patchwork of red and orange and brown, it serves as a comforting reminder that despite the temperatures, we are well indeed into fall. Somehow, though, whenever I'm at the city cemetery, I can sense that we're never quite alone. In fact, folklore of all kinds suggests that we're not. Stories from Appalachia to the Cherokee Nation seem to be in a common agreement that this time of day, this dawn, this is when those silent figures move between the tombstones. Some call them the shadows of the past. Some call them spirits that keep watch over places like this. Some say they guard the veil between the living and the deceased. It turns out, though, that there's more truth to these stories than you or I realize. It turns out that there are watchers out there. There are souls that tend to watch over these places. The paths, the headstones, when you look around, you can see their presence everywhere. And it makes places like Ellijay's City Cemetery somewhere really unique to go. And this weekend, I got to meet some of those souls. Welcome to Ellijay Life. My name's Jared Degnan. The trail starts here. Welcome back to Ellijay Life. My name is Jared Degnan. If this is the first time you're joining us, I am an Atlantan who comes up to Ellijay like many others. My husband's family is from here, and I'm exploring Ellijay story by story because this place is so interesting, and I want to share their stories with you. I was doing some research for a Halloween episode. I really wanted to do something that had to do with ghost stories. And so when I was doing the research on famous ghosts around Ellijay, the one that I found that was most prominent, or the one that I could find as much information on it, was Jeffrey. Now, Jeffrey is a resident of the Tabor House Museum. The Tabor House is right off of Ellijay Square, and it's actually one of the oldest surviving structures in Ellijay, built around the 1870s. It really deserves its own story, its own episode. But I'll just say that inside, you're going to find a curio of artifacts and photos. I mean, like stacked to the brim with stories, not just about Ellijay, but about the people who have come here, lived here, explored here. The interesting thing that I found out, though, is that as much as these exhibits are truly interesting, and again, I'm going to do a whole episode on the Tabor Museum, the thing that was really fascinating, the story that I want to cover today, is actually the volunteers. So when I visited this most recent weekend, I met a group of folks from the Daughters of the American Revolution. Turns out that the DAR takes turns with the Gilmer Historical Society in playing docent to the Tabor House. And I was talking to this one volunteer, Susan, and Martha and some of their friends who were helping to give tours on that day. And it turns out that their work doesn't stop at the museum. These same volunteers are actually the ones that help preserve and protect some of the most interesting places in Ellijay and around Gilmer County. They clean headstones, they plant flowers, they uncover forgotten graves, and they are, in many ways, the real life watchers. These are the guardians who keep Ellijay's past alive. So let's start with the fact that cemeteries in Ellijay, like in many rural towns, they're not just burial sites. They're reflections of the town's layered history. Unlike urban cemeteries, which tend to be managed by professional groundskeepers, Ellijay's are cared for by the community. In fact, Ellijay City Cemetery, the place that I go with Lucy almost every morning that we're here, used to be covered by an enormous amount of kudzu. And in case you're not from the South, kudzu is like Ivy's cheaper, uglier cousin that tends to cover everything. It's very dangerous to old hardwood trees, and the kudzu at Ellijay Cemetery had started to cover some of these beautiful, beautiful old trees and really obscure the character of the cemetery. And you'll find this throughout the cemeteries in these rural towns. And what makes these places beautiful, not just to preserve the history, but also makes them places where visitors can go as well as residents, is that they are taken care of like any other park or any other beautiful space in one of these areas. In particular, Ellijay City Cemetery was established in the mid-1800s, originally as a burial site for the town's earliest settlers. In fact, this particular cemetery has like the 15th or the 17th oldest tombstone in the country. As it has grown, it includes veterans from various conflicts, including Confederate soldiers, those from both World Wars, Korea, but it also holds the graves of African Americans and Native Americans. And groups like the Daughters of the American Revolution and the Gilmer Historical Society actually take upon themselves to uncover and clean these graves that were once forgotten. And because they are now uncovered, it tells a more complete story, a bigger tapestry of who the town is and where the town has come from culturally as well as historically. I will also mention that cemeteries in places like Ellijay have an interesting set of traditions. Not only are there these watchers, these caretakers, but one of the interesting things that I found from my husband's family is that there's a tradition called homecoming. This is where families take and beautify these cemeteries with flowers. They clean up the gravestones, and that creates this amazing space that is not just well taken care of, but you can see that people clearly put thought and effort into these cemeteries as a place to tell the story of these areas. So let's talk a little bit about Ellijay City Cemetery to start off with. This is really where Ellijay's history kind of unfolds with every path and every gravestone. I love not only looking at some of the more prominent names, Bramlett, Cox, Penland, but there are also some significant graves that if you ask one of these volunteers, they will tell you the prominent role they play in early Ellijay, like Colonel Leonard Pritchett, who was a Confederate soldier, but played a significant role in the development of Ellijay's early economy. What is amazing, though, is that the DAR and other local groups they have restored previously overlooked sections of these cemeteries, including graves of African Americans and Native Americans. And it really ensures that cemeteries like this remain a place of collective memory and shared heritage. This is an effort they take on of their own volition. They use their own money, they use their own resources, they organize their own volunteers. And what is amazing is that it creates these spaces, these cemetery spaces where all parts of Ellijay's past and present are given due respect. These efforts ensure that the cemeteries not only remain a place of collective memory, but are incredibly beautiful and are a part of Ellijay's history and past, just like any other structure in the city. Now, another one of the volunteers, Susan, told me about some of her work at Rose Cemetery. Now, Rose is a little bit outside of the city, but it is a quiet, beautiful space among some stunning oaks. It was established a little bit later than City Cemetery, in about the late 19th century, but it's become a resting place for local farmers, workers, and veterans, with some of the gravestones dating back to the 1900s. And it really tells the stories of those who shaped the area. The Gilmer County Heritage Group, one of those groups that help to support and maintain these spaces, they've brought to light graves belonging to African American families and Native American families, and have ensured these stories aren't forgotten. Every uncovered name and restored headstone is really a tribute to the spirit of those watchers and those who care for and honor Ellijay's past. So I really have to admit that I loved meeting these folks, and I really can't wait to go back to the Tabor House Museum, because these folks are more than just caretakers. These folks are more than just caretakers. They're really the embodiment of the town's history. They maintain rounds, they research unmarked graves, they restore headstones, all to ensure that every life, whether prominent or overlooked, is honored. Their work reminds us that these spaces are not just about the past, they're about unity. These watchers bridge generations, bringing together the stories of Confederate soldiers, African American residents, Native Americans, and more. In their hands, these cemeteries become places of remembrance and of connection. So I really encourage you, next time that you're here, take a walk through some of these cemeteries. Know that you're standing not just on historic, but shared ground. And know that these are the watchers that ensure that every name, every life, and every story has a place in Ellijay's town legacy. I want to thank you for joining me on this journey through the graveyards of Ellijay. And if today's episode resonated with you, be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned as we continue to explore the hidden places and stories that make Ellijay and its surrounding region so special. Until next time, I'm Jared Degnan. This has been Ellijay Life. The trail always starts here.